Thank you. So I just want to, those were their bios, and that's everything they've done. But I'm curious to find out on a daily basis what your job is like. What are you, every day when you go to work, what are you thinking about? What are you responsible for? What are you like currently working on? In 2 seconds or less.
Right. So I'm in a unique role at Universal Music Group because I have 2 jobs, basically heading up the urban division of Universal Publishing, which is where I kind of got my start in running a record label. So no day is the same, basically, but I have 2 amazing teams. And so currently, we're working on a new Erykah Badu album, which I'm really excited about. We're working on a new Neo record, which I'm really excited about. And really on the Motown front, it's about rebranding the label. Our slogan is the new definition of soul, and it's about music that you can feel, right? And when you think of Motown, you think about these kids out of Detroit that were able to make music that affected the world, and we want to be able to provide that platform again. So we've been reestablishing the roster and signing new, fresh talent, and creating a platform to really do that. And on the songwriter front, on the publishing front, we led the team this year to be BMI's Urban Publisher of the Year, 3 years in a row. And we really have built an amazing songwriter roster. I've been there for 13 years now on the publishing side and signed everyone from Chris Brown to Justin Bieber to J. Cole to Big Sean, Jhené Aiko. And it's about finding new, fresh talent that can do it again. And so we're ahead of the curve always, and we have an amazing team that continues to do that.
And just for those in the room that need that clarity, just tell the difference between the artist side and the publishing side for those that may need to
know. So on the publishing side, the job of a music publisher is to work with songwriters, find fresh songwriters that write the music for these artists. So I named some of the artists that we work with on the publishing side, but I'll give you an example. There is a writer that I discovered named Sebastian Cole, who's from Birmingham, Alabama. He was basically homeless and drove to Los Angeles. A friend called me at 2 a.m. and said, "You have to hear this kid, he's amazing." I was like, "Are you sure?" They were like, "You have to hear him." And he came and played the piano for me. This was 2 years ago. And I signed him on the spot. I gave him a development deal for $50,000. He's gone on to have a massive global hit with an artist by the name of Alessia Cara on Def Jam Records. She's one of the new breakout artists in music today, and he had nothing. And so the job of a music publisher is to find new, fresh talent, create opportunities for them to have their songs placed, and hopefully create music that affects the world. And so that's really why I got into music, because I fell in love with music at a young age when I was a little girl here in Atlanta. And so on the artist side, it's about finding the talent that can bring those songs to life. And so when you think of Motown, you think of great artists, right? Artists that were truly developed, artists that could sing amazing songs that people would fall in love with and want to emulate and give them hope. And so that's what we're hoping to do again.
Wonderful. Chris, I mean, I know that the Atlanta Office of Entertainment is fairly new, happening just under Mayor Reed's administration. So tell me about, how that's been for you. You've been, has it been a year now about for you? Not quite? Okay, so tell us about what your life is like every day.
I think that, for the most part, the office it's a permitting office in first and foremost. And so, we're obviously doing very well in that area as far as volume permitting and volume shooting. I think the state is number 3 per capita behind New York and California. And so we're doing well there. My day-to-day conquest is trying to create sustainability for this model, something that's not directly attached to a tax credit or some sort of financial subsidization. I would like for us to be able to make the same inroads that we were able to make over the last year in the music space, and I think it's a great case study for how we can move our model forward. So as we look to, our city is, arguably the 3rd largest with over 15 Fortune 500 companies here. We obviously are doing very well in volume shooting. I'm trying to create synergies amongst the new paradigms, not just your traditional TV outlets, but more of your digital outlets. Obviously, your telephone is the new television, and so trying to figure out ways where we can look in the cracks and crevices for our opportunity and to be able to stake our claim outside of the traditional Hollywood model.
That is so, I have so many questions. That's so interesting. D'Angela, you bring that business to Chris and come for the permitting because you make all the decisions around all of the programming for TV One. So what is your day like every day?
No day is the same, but for the most part, I work with both sides of the brain where on any given day, I may be reading scripts, I may be casting a project, I may be searching for a production company to actually execute the project. I oversee all of the originals that you see on TV One, from Unsung franchise to our new Crime and Justice Night to our daily news program. So I do scripted, I do news, I do reality shows, and I oversee all of that with the staff, a team of about 5 people, so we're all very, very busy. I have roughly 120 hours of original programming that I oversee, and I'm also an attorney by trade, or by education, I should say. I no longer practice, but I practice every day in my job because I'm also business affairs. So I, close the deals and pass them off to the attorneys. So like I said, I'm kind of bipolar. Any given day, it's a little schizophrenic in my world.
So I'm going to stay with you for a second, and this is really for both you and Ethiopia. I mean, you're at the highest level, of your companies in the sector that you're in. Talk a little bit about the budgeting process and the amount of money you control and some of the challenges that you deal with, whether it's, from your CEO or whether it's from, trickling down. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I don't control my own P&L. I'm the senior vice president of original programming and production. I actually report to the president, but I oversee a budget of roughly $56 million. That's what we have allocated towards originals. So what that entails is I have to know what every project is going to land, where every project is going to land budget-wise. I have to, make sure that they come in on budget and on schedule. I also have to, manage risk, because one decision could knock me over, because it's not a lot of money to program a network of our size. $56 million is just not a lot of money at all, and it goes by really fast when you have so many successful programs like Unsung. We know that we're going to do about 20 of those a year, so that locks out a certain amount of money. But I also have to make sure that the investments within the investments are right, because Unsung is a volatile show where no one wanted to do Johnny Taylor, but I'm from Texas. Right? So Johnny Taylor came out, and it was a hugely successful show when no one in the building knew who he was. But then I can, invest in, I consider every episode an investment, because once the episode premieres, and maybe you spent $350,000 an episode on it, if that episode did not work, that's $350,000 down the drain. So you have to manage every single decision from a financial perspective, and that's a huge part of what I do every day.
And what about the challenge of wanting to do something with that $56 million and then being told, I don't necessarily think that's what it should go towards, or you saying, I'm going to spend it, and then you don't see the return?
Oh, I fight all the time. True story, no one wanted to do the Mickey Howard story. I wanted, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, so you guys should know that. That's one of the reasons why I really wanted to be a part of this. I've been at TV One for 3 years, and this is my first job since the late 1900s. So it's been a challenge knowing that you want to do something and someone there is telling you no. Like, I don't really accept no's very well. So one of the things that I did in order to get the job, when I lobbied for the job, I told the CEO, I said, you need to expand the Unsung franchise into other ways, whether it be touring, concerts, music. Can we talk later? I'm just joking, but not. But I thought that Unsung should be expanded into a film franchise. And one of the first, I went after Phyllis Hyman first. But, when you deal with people who are alive, getting the rights can be challenging, because those estates overvalue their properties. So I knew I had to find someone who was alive, and I wanted to find someone that really fit the sweet spot of TV One's core audience. And you may not know Mickey Howard by name, but when you hear her music, Love Under New Management, those types of things. I knew that it would work. So I had to go to the president and then the CEO, and I had to really like lay my job on the line to say, this will work. And you know, at the end of the day, everything that I do boils down to a good story. So it could have been insert any person for Unsung, but her story was so great. I like to say this lady sings the blues, except she lived to tell about it. And the movie really worked. So I have to fight all the time. And you would think that once you have a series of wins, you don't have to fight, but you actually have to fight harder. So that's the challenge.
Yeah, Ethiopia is dying to get on the mic over here.
Yeah.
Go, girl.
But what she just said is absolutely the truth. You would think that after you have so many wins that it would be easier, right? But it's not. It absolutely is harder, which was a big learning curve for me because I definitely didn't think it would be, but I had to learn that on the job, right? And as you move up in your career and the air gets a little thinner, it gets even harder, right? So going back to your question about managing the budgets, it's, you know, when looking at new acquisitions and talent, right? Talent, we invest in new talent. That's what the music business is all based on, new, fresh talent. And you can have a successful year, you can break new talent, and you have to do it again and again. And luckily on the Motown side, we have an amazing catalog that generates a great amount of money. And so when looking at really rebranding the label and really kind of restarting the label, we have this foundation of a catalog that really sustains, you know, the label and what we're looking to do, and gives us breathing room, because as the industry has changed, we've gone through a rough period as it pertains to what they consider to be R&B or urban music as they look at it. And there wasn't as much of an investment in that genre of music.
Sure.
And I will tell you, in the past year, that has changed significantly. And that's really because the distribution model has changed. Streaming services, right? We are now seeing the income from streaming services, and we're also receiving the information from the streaming services, which has come back and taught the music industry that hip-hop, R&B music, is the genre of music that is generating the most income. So we're seeing an influx of income come in now, and they're like, oh, actually, we should invest more money in this area of music because this is where the kids are mostly interested in, right? And so Spotify, Apple Music, now Pandora, we've worked out all these deals in the past year and a half, and we're seeing an influx of income, whereas I'm sure the storyline has been for several years now, the music industry has been in the slump. There's no money here. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen is that there's a lot of money being made now. And also, they now recognize that this area of music, urban music, is back, right? So it's actually a great position for all of us to be in, because they understand the value that we all know has been there. We all know on a core level, because we live and breathe it, and we work with these artists, that's the investment we should continue to be in. So, you know, it's been a challenging few years being inside a major corporation, and a corporation that's made money from this area of music, but then there was a slump, right? And so being inside the company, having to have those challenges and have those fights, but then they still believe in you and they understand it'll come back, and the distribution model changed, and now they're seeing the money come back. It's been an interesting period, but we're seeing the influx now, and it's great.
And can you just give us one quick example of something you believed in that you had to fight for, or maybe something that you tried to do and it didn't work out, and what the reaction to that was?
Miguel at the publishing company. Before Miguel blew up, before anyone really knew like Miguel on a major level, before his Grammy performance, we probably knew, one of his songs, right? Before Adorn came out, etc. Knew Miguel as a songwriter. I actually knew when he first pursued a record deal, but believed in him, always had a really close relationship with him and wanted to sign him to the publishing company. Probably pursued it for about a year and a half. No. Adorn comes out. Other publishers start pursuing, but it still hadn't blown up. I go to my boss, like, we need to do it. Have a close relationship, etc. And finally, the deal becomes very competitive, and we have to move on the deal. And the head of the whole music group I happen to be in a meeting with him, and it comes up, and he's aware of the deal because of the cost of the deal, and literally tries to talk me out of doing the deal. And I was like, absolutely not. Trust me on this. This is probably in November. And then they let me do it. February of that year, Miguel performed at the Grammys. He performed Adorn. He had a small piece. The song took off. It blew up. And we made a ton of money off that deal. And other publishers didn't even know we closed the deal, and everyone wanted to sign him after that. And I got an email like, "You're right. I'll always trust you on this," which, is great, but it doesn't really happen that way.
Yes, and they could have got it for 1/3 less if they had listened
absolutely.
to you in the beginning, right? Okay. Chris, so Atlanta has just been booming with entertainment, and we're watching it. And one thing I always wonder is, where is the investment from all the companies coming in, besides in the area of just permitting the space that they need? How will, what you were talking about earlier, the sustainability of it, how will these entertainment companies sort of fit into the community in Atlanta, jobs, beyond just coming here and filming?
I don't think that they're really making an effort to fit in, to be very honest with you. I think Atlanta, this is the South. We do very well economically here, but we have a very low risk tolerance for intellectual property. So vis-a-vis, Los Angeles has a very high tolerance for entertainment, music, film, TV. Silicon Valley has a very high risk tolerance in the tech world. We here, if there's not 4 walls and some air conditioning running through it and some red soil underneath it, we are very risk adverse to a traditional model. And I think one thing that we have to do here is doing a better job of creating, is educating, because there is no typical analytical model that you can attach to why something is going to be successful and why it's not. She just spoke to relying on her gut instinct, on making an assignment, making a signing that even if you take it back, if I use her analogy, if you look back to when she could have signed it for 1/3 of what it was worth, there were still no numbers to support why she was spending 1/3 of what she ended up spending. And so people relied on her intelligence, her expertise to make that decision. Here we are a community of transients as it pertains to the content space. People come here and use the great offerings that we have here, and they pack everything else and go home. So the reason why I really rely on the music model is because obviously I came from that, but no large company, Sony, Universal, none of those companies decided to come and set up shop here. It was very entrepreneurial-minded people, Bobby Brown, LA and Babyface, that came here and planted seeds in the ground, and something sprouted up. And then from that, people like Dallas Austin and Jermaine Dupri and Organized Noise followed the success and emulated the success that they saw out of those entrepreneurs. And then you had waves of entrepreneurs like ourselves that came and wanted to emulate that success. And before you knew it, everything was coming from here, be it music, be it executives. We controlled the left-hand side of the chart for 20 years or so. Beyonce wanted to hit, she had to come here. Mary J. Blige wanted to hit, they had to come here. So the same kind of foresight and aptitude is going to have to take place in the content space. And I think it's a very regal time for it. Like I said, your telephone is now your television, and there's traditional content formats that, like D'Angelo runs, and then there's very non-traditional content formats. You guys are watching what's happening with Verizon, watching what's happening with the AT&Ts of the world. These people are buying bandwidth, and in order to be able to maintain the bandwidth, they have to be able to flood it with content. And they have to be able to flood it with content, with all due respect, faster than the pace than the traditional Hollywood platforms can create it. And so to me, it's a very ripe time for very young, not even young, innovative, great storytelling to be able to find new homes and be able to populate some of these new inroads. A lot of your advertising dollar is moving right off of that traditional screen right over to your phone in scale. And so I think it's a really ripe time, and that's where I spend a lot of my time both as a city official but also as an entrepreneur, trying to figure out the cracks in those crevices.
Will there be a marriage between the sort of entrepreneurial side of you and the city side of you to try to figure out how to bring that together in, a legislative way that is sort of impactful on the companies that just come here? Because I hear what you're saying about content, and we all, like in all of our jobs, and me on the radio, and even when I teach law school, I'm always trying to find content to bring the new generation, inside of what's going on or who I'm teaching. But that doesn't translate to corporations making an investment in the community and seeing some real things happening. So is it maybe something as both a public official and as an entrepreneur that you can try to marry together and take to the General Assembly or something like that?
Well, I think that one of the reasons, or I think a primary reason why the mayor brought me to the city is because at the root of everything I've done, I'm entrepreneurial. And so, I do have to admit though, working in the civic sector, it's
challenge.
it's a different process.
Yes.
But the entrepreneurial side of me believes very strongly in creating case study. And so I have to kind of go around the world to go across the street by way of civic, but as an entrepreneur, I can just go across the street. And so I try and do everything with a little bit of tact and make sure that they're complementary. But my goal is to create case study, whether I do it as an entrepreneur or whether I do it through my civic duty, where at the end of the day, but at the end of my tenure here, there'd be a reflective point that starts that conversation of, he was able to do it like this and he scaled it. He was able to do it like this and he scaled it. Whether the scale happens on a 3 or on a 10, to be able to show some degree of scale to get this community more comfortable with their risk tolerance as it pertains to IP.
That's great. I am going to give time for the audience to ask questions because I know that you're going to have some questions, but I wanted to first ask, does the impact of a changing administration affect, you like that, right? I was saying a couple of days ago some really nasty words when I would say that exact same thing, but then I was told, you've got to be more professional and neutral about it. So does a changing administration affect your jobs as industry professionals? I mean, I know in the music industry there's so much lobbying and legislation for, all of the things. And we've done cases about the streaming and how do artists get paid and, performance rights. How, when you're sort of going to come against or maybe for industry and artists and company rights, does that factor into sort of your plan for, say, 2017?
Yeah, I know for Universal Music Group that they have 2 people in DC that have been there for years now, but they hired a new guy probably about a year ago, and he's been there preparing for what could happen, whoever ended up winning the presidency. And so I spoke with him prior to the election, and he was like, we've had to build relationships on both sides, just to prepare for whatever could happen, because I'll say on the publishing side, we are fighting to make sure songwriters get paid properly. That is a huge issue for us, and it really is. On a grassroots level, it's about educating people on the value of music again and understanding that people that create this music, that create the content, are worthy of being paid fairly. And he's doing a great job, and we've made some inroads internationally that hopefully will affect things here in the U.S. and create policy moving forward. So we'll see what happens, but we were prepared for what could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, for us, we're prepared, but we don't know where Trump stands. We don't know where he stands. I don't think the country knows where he's going to land on a lot of these issues. He's already flim-flamming on half the stuff that he committed to anyway. But the 2 biggest issues for the, I'll say the major issue for the cable industry is the set-top box issue.
Absolutely.
But we don't know where he's going to land on that. We don't know where he's going to land on whether he's going to support the big merger. He's a businessman, so you would think that he would be all for it.
Right.
But it's really a wait-see game because we just don't know. He didn't run on policy. He didn't run on a platform. He just ran on a feeling. So we don't know what he's going to do yet, but we'll be prepared either way.
And Chris, I want to ask you that question because our mayor has, 1 more year left and enjoys a wonderful relationship with the White House currently, which has benefited Atlanta greatly, and in all areas of business in Atlanta. What do you see in the next year as you all prepare for, leaving that administration and hoping that the things you've put in place will be able to continue effectively? Does a change in administration have you with any concerns?
Me personally, no. Because one, I don't really play politics. I think that the root of what I am focused on is on a developmental level. And so I think that in the age of disruption, I think that's always a positive when you are developing. And to be very candid with you, I rely very heavily on our mayor and his insight. He's obviously a close friend of mine, but I believe that he's very effective at what he does, and he's wildly intelligent. And I think that he understands policy very well, and he understands relationships very well. And I think that ultimately he will leave the city. He's obviously living in a much better place than it was when he got here. But I think even moving forward for the next administration, he will help to leave the city and to continue to help the city stay on solid ground and moving in an upward direction.
Wonderful. We'll close with one last question before we have an opportunity to open it up for questions. If there's one thing that you'd like to accomplish in 2017, whether it's a project you're starting now and it's going to flow into, what is one of the to-do items on your list for 2017 that you'd like to accomplish in your capacity? Yeah, start with you.
I am working very diligently I run a short form content company. And so I believe that the way that a lot of these different platforms, be it AT&T, be it Verizon, attract and retain their viewership is by way of story, narrative story. And so it's my goal by way as an entrepreneur or even helping citizens of our community affect that change, to be able to create short form narrative content that goes mainstream, that is as effective as an Empire, as effective as a House of Cards. I think that's where Atlanta will find its niche. I think that we have all the infrastructure here to be able to carry that out. And I think that that's a stepping stone in putting us in control of our own destiny and not have to knock on the bureaucracy's door for permission to do things. And so that's something I'm going to get done. It's not even like she says, I don't really believe in no. It may be a distant yes from time to time. But it's
Yes.
not gonna be.
Is it going to be reality based?
No.
Yay. Okay.
Narrative,
Because we
scripted
have a
narrative.
lot of that in Atlanta.
Scripted narrative.
Yeah. Okay, D'Angelo, I saw you go, when I said that. Talk.
Because I think you need it all. I think you need reality,
That's
you
true.
need factual, you need scripted. Art imitates life, life imitates art. There would be no scandal if there weren't a Real Housewives of Atlanta, because we were never given permission for Black women to have multiple shades of who they are until you saw them in a reality context, which gave broadcast networks the permission to say, this might work. Just saying.
Yeah.
So don't knock reality TV. You don't have to be on one, Mariah, but you can. See, I went way back with her name. You don't have to be on one.
If you do
but
one
don't
about a
knock it.
lawyer, a radio personality who teaches in Howard Law School, then I'll do it.
Exactly.
right.
So,
Documentary style.
I think that, cable television is in an interesting place right now. It is undergoing the disruption that the music business underwent. So
All forms of media, by the
all
way.
forms of
Yeah.
media,
Yeah.
but cable television is next. Cable television is on deck.
And what's that disruption from?
The disruption is from digital media. It's from Netflix. It's from
They don't-
cord cutters, people who cut the cord who don't have cable anymore that once had it. Cord shavers who cut down their cable bill month to month. Like they'll get stars when power's on or what have you. That's a cord shaver. Then you have cord nevers, that's my son, who as an adult will never have cable television. So when you have, we receive 50% of our revenue from the cable bill. And if people are no longer subscribing to cable, that takes away 50% of the revenue that I need in order to create content. So I urge everyone in this room to think about when you're like, oh, I don't need cable anymore, I'm just gonna get Netflix. You're creating a super broadcast network, right? Because at some point, cable networks will not be able to survive, especially the small independent cable networks, because they don't have the ad revenue, then they don't get the eyeballs anymore, which means they don't get the advertising revenue. So where are they gonna get the revenue from? So I think that cable television you know, we're at a crossroads and we have to figure out other revenue streams, additional cash registers, as I like to call them, any identifying ways in which our content can be chopped up and can service a Verizon or AT&T and get paid extra money for it in order for us to continue providing great content. And that's one of the challenges that I foresee for cable, TV One specifically. For me, I have to I'm taking this year to really look at all of the different cash registers that I could access with my existing slate of content.
Right.
Fundamentally, though, in whether it's music, TV, advertising, editorial, whenever you lose control of distribution, your model is going to change.
Absolutely.
There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. The generation that's coming up right now, they're not going to revert. It's all they know, whatever it's worth.
And quickly, D'Angelo, how do the consolidation of all the companies, the media conglomerates, affect a Black-owned small network like TV One, especially with the AT&T possible merger?
I mean, it's borderline devastating because, you know, let's use BET as a case study for a second. BET is now owned by Viacom. BET has a suite of digital channels, and they also have Centric. So when an advertiser goes to BET to buy something, they can, you know, the ad sales team has the capability of saying, oh, I can't give you BET for run of schedule, but I'll give you this one thing on BET, but you got to take all this other stuff from these other networks. So there's a way to still get the money from them without giving up your prime real estate. So when you're an independent cable network, you have nowhere to go. Luckily, we are owned by Radio One, and we can do some different things, and we also have the Interactive One suite of sites, brilliant on Alfred's part, my boss. But we have, you know, Hello Beautiful, the Urban Grind, the Urban Daily. So we have a suite of sites that we can, you know, channel some revenue to. We have the radio stations, the 54 radio stations, and we have the 9 syndicated radio programs. So at least we have something, but it's still not the same as having a suite of television networks. So some of the smaller ones, there's 5 to 7 years, some of them will just be gone.
Right.
They'll be gone.
Her model, though, is the model. Their model at TV One, Radio One, they touch millennials, Generation Zers.
Oh, throughout
On
all the
every-
Touch
demos.
85% of Black America every week.
Yes.
85%.
So they're
And
gonna-
what's the viewership on TV One in numbers?
We're in 60 million households right now,
60
but we're
million.
not fully distributed. You know, so for instance, like a OWN or a BET, they may be in 98 or 100 million households. Excuse me. We're in 60 million, so we still have some room to grow, which is good news.
With the cable providers?
With cable, yes.
Okay. All right, Ethiopia.
Oh.
I can't even remember what the question
yeah,
was.
I was going to ask you.
What do you have on your agenda for 2017? What are some of the pressing issues that you want to deal with?
Well,
or
look, I'll
accomplish?
say that the one main goal is really, you know, I look at Motown as a luxury brand. And I say that because it's a luxury brand in the way that it has so much history. And I think it's so relevant. The history and all that goes along to it is very, very relevant to today. And so my goal is to create synergy with different partners to really remind people of that history with new music and new talent. And so that's the goal. And I think that we've all kind of hit on the different ways to do that. And content is king, and that's really what it's about more now than ever. And, you know, working with our different distribution partners now, Spotify, Apple Music, et cetera, to really create new ways of doing that. That's like the key for us. And they have other platforms now in creating content to do that. So there's some fun things ahead for us.
Wonderful. Everybody put your hands together for our panelists who gave some great information. Do you want to open it up for questions?
Yes. You can state your name briefly in your question.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Naya Andrews, and I want to thank you all for coming out and sharing your information. But my question, well, feel free to answer anyone, but it's directed to you, Miss Ethiopia. I'm a lover of Motown. I love all old music. But what are some of the challenges you may face trying to rebrand or reface an existing company like Motown?
There are many challenges. One being that the history of Motown and the people that know Motown from, you know, the music from back then they want the songs from back then. But it's 2017 basically,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And at the end of the day, when I agreed to be a part of it and they told me their vision was to reestablish the label in a new, fresh way and really do it on the basis of allowing new talent to have a real platform, and that they agreed to give this talent the support to,
Yes.
the talent to go global. And at that time, this is when we were still dealing with urban music not being fully supported. So there were many challenges that existed because we weren't getting the budgets necessary to really push it forward. And again, as I just explained, because our distribution model has changed, we are getting more support now. That was the biggest challenge, because you want to make sure that these artists are developed properly, that they have the work ethic, that you're getting the songs that are necessary, et cetera. So there are many challenges that existed, but then you have people that remember a Motown sound, but today there isn't one sound that exists. I believe in talent being able to, people who are self-aware, artists who are self-aware and know who they are, getting an opportunity to sing their songs, do their music, and you fully support them if you feel like other people will connect to it. And that's what I want to be able to support, artists that really know who they are and create great music and giving it the platform to go to the world.
Great answer.
First of all, thank you to all your panelists. I do need to shout out a special thanks to you and to Kathy Hughes, and a congratulations on the school naming. In line with that,
They
yeah,
may not know,
Yes,
so
at Howard
the
University.
School of Communications at Howard University was just named Kathy Hughes School of Communications.
yes. In line with that, my question then is, as we look at what is happening, not just in the U.S., but in the world, we're no longer politically a divided economy when we speak of the global market. Where do you see your roles or your company's roles with respect to the education of the political environment to your audience? And do you see a responsibility of that?
Well, I do, certainly, and so does Alfred, and so does Kathy, Miss Hughes, rather. She would kill me. I mean, we take our responsibility very seriously. We have News One Now, which is a daily news program featuring Roland Martin. And one of the things that we plan to do, and I think you asked this question about the Trump administration, we plan to hold him to the fire. We have a great relationship with the Congressional Black Caucus. The members of the caucus are welcome to come on the show at any time. And we definitely make sure that we service the show beyond the network. So this on Facebook, Facebook Live, it's on Twitter, it's on Instagram, and so on and so forth, to make sure that the message gets out there. But we are going to serve as the traditional black media company, where we are making our people aware, and people across the world, of what we are going through as a result of the election and Trump's presidency. So, like I said, we take it very seriously. You know, news is not a money-making venture. It is definitely a service. It is a public service for us, and we take it seriously. We were even on the air the night of the election live for 6 hours. It was painful, but we were on the air for 6 hours. So we will continue to service it, and we want to make sure that it's, you know, throughout the world, not just stateside.
Hi, I'm Angela Edmond. I'm a local producer here in Atlanta, and I'm not sure if you've already spoken to this, and I apologize, but what are your network needs coming up for 2017? Can you talk a little bit about what TV One is doing? I know you mentioned film, but also just in your regular programming.
Sure. The way the cable television business works is we have what's called upfronts, television upfronts. So we're now working on 2018 because our ad sales team, they've been out in the marketplace selling 2017 already. So we would have had to make those decisions a year ago. So our 2017 is primarily locked. So we have opportunities for 2018, and I program in three primary buckets right now. That's factual programs, which are like documentary style programs like Unsung. And then we also, and true crime. True crime is also a factual program that we have a Monday night of True Crime and Justice, which works really well for the network. Then we have our reality programming, which we're slowly weaning ourselves from, but we do have reality program offerings that make sense, like the Ricky Smiley Show that premieres this Tuesday. And it makes sense for us because he's one of our radio personalities. And then we are also in the movie of the month business. We don't premiere them weekly, but we're building up the volume. So any movie ideas that you may have, any scripts, we're looking for those. Always looking for great stories. And then now in 2017, we will be premiering our first drama series. So look for that in the summer of 2017. And in its success, we will add more of those to the docket for 2018. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Agnes Andrews from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I've been in business for 32 years selling insurance. So when I started out, radio is really what kicked my business into overdrive. I mean, there was a local station that had a talk show host, and if you could get on her station and advertise your business, it was like people started to knowing you. So what do you foresee in reference to radio, in reference to advertisers, in reference to baby boomers that are still wanting to hold on? We don't want to give up. We want to work till we die, and we still doing pretty good.
I
And
don't think radio's dying. I think radio is changing.
okay.
Everything is changing.
I think it's changing. I don't think that it's dying. As long as there are cars, I don't think that radio is going to change. I don't think it's going to die. I think what radio needs to do, and I think it is doing, the brick and mortar traditional radio station goes away. Because you can, Mo and I were talking about this yesterday, where, there's this thing, there's a Comrex box where she can do her show from sitting right here if she wanted to. You can do radio from anywhere. So I think that radio has to cut back on its expenses, and maybe, 3 people have to do the job of 10, but I don't think radio is going away, but the nature of radio is changing. I still think that you should definitely not, and you know what, radio is fueled by local businesses. So I think you should definitely continue to support radio. I don't think it's going away.
I agree. I don't think it's going away. Look, I think that when you look at the big communication companies that own most of these stations across the country, that they have to change their model, right? And I think that they have to realize it goes back to being about the community and allowing the stations to operate from the perspective of what's best for their community. And I think that they're changing their models now because they realize it's all changing, and they're not making the money that they used to make. So I don't think radio will go away. I do think that streaming services have come in and completely kicked their butt as it pertains to music and breaking new music and breaking artists, et cetera. But when it comes to that level of community that you get from radio and, hearing those DJs on and hearing those different anchors on, you're like, okay, that there's a sense of connection that will never be lost and people will always want, and you want that connection, but I don't think it'll go away. I just think it's going to change.
I'll jump in that real quick as a radio personality. I don't think it's going to go away, but I think it forces the talent. I heard you say when you first started that there was a woman, and if you could get on her show, your business would boom. I think that a lot of radio stations have lost the ability to really hone in on what their talent offers and nurture that thing in their talent. And so what talent ends up having to do many times is to brand and invent yourself without really the support of management or, the owner of the radio station. So I find myself, I super serve women 25 to 54. That's who I serve. So if Eric Benet comes in the studio, I already know what I'm supposed to be talking to him about, right? And what women want to hear from him, but to be a little bit different than every other woman on a radio station that's going to ask him those questions, I might ask him about being in a second or third marriage, or about what he feels about having labels put on him, or what he felt about the treatment that he received in the media, or if he participates in the political process. You have to really try to figure out different ways to make yourself attractive. And then the advertisers will say, well, what about that woman that is on in the afternoons that also teaches? Can we get her students to try out our product or something. So there's a
Right,
lot.
will make Procter & Gamble want to spend their advertising dollars with you specifically
Exactly.
because you touch their demographic, their audience, and they can, yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And advertisers are coming to radio stations and they want more. Like there used to be a time where they just had a budget and they spent it and the talent got paid their endorsement fee and everything was great. But it's not that way anymore. Now they want to know how many followers you have. Do you tweet? Can you write a blog? Can you come out to the event? Can you stay after for the meet and greet? Can you also talk to the president of the company and come say hi? I mean, it's a much more demanding investment from the talent, but that is because radio has evolved in that way. And if you're really committed to it as a talent, you'll want to do those things anyway because it's better for you and you want to, keep your job. So that's really how advertisers and radio stations have had to push and pull with each other.
Okay. And in terms of the Motown, in our community, we do, myself along with another person, we host an event which is a scholarship fundraiser every homecoming at our university. And so we'll have, usually we call it the Gala on the Bluff. And we have someone.
What do you call it again?
Gala on the Bluff.
Okay.
It's in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Our university is on the Bluff. Okay. And so we have someone of a national artist. Either one year we had the Temptations. We just had the event a few weeks ago. We had Freddie Jackson. We've had Jeffrey Osborne. And I mean, people in the, I guess you want to call us the baby boomer generation, they come out, they have fun. You could actually see it on YouTube, our Gala on the Bluff. You can YouTube it and see the fun that the people have because we just so love what Motown has done for us. This lady right here, when she was a little baby before she could even walk, she was dancing to Motown. And so we love that, and that has really helped us to serve as a fundraising event because we bring in usually a Motown artist to perform, and we have usually over 1,000 people at the event at $200 a person, so we can raise
Talk
money.
after this.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes, thank you. Any more questions?
I actually have a question. And I just want to shift back to our theme a little bit, and thank you for your remarks. This question's for all three of you. So just like medicine, there will always be a demand for music as well. And so how do you begin to encourage the younger generation when they sort of hear a new artist on TV and say, this song is great? How do you change the mindset so that they're not saying, I want to be the next artist to sing, but I want to produce that track. I want to make that video. I want to be behind the scenes in the entrepreneurial way where, they're writing the songs as opposed to singing them. This industry, and we're at the hub, there's a huge market for this, but for our community, we're creative, we're innovators, we're always going to be making original music, but how do you begin to shift the mindset of folks to think, it's not just about being on stage, but it's probably in some cases even more powerful to be behind the stage?
I personally think that it's happening organically. I truly do. I think that there are as many young people who aspire to, I think information is power now, and they all have access to it by way of their social mediums. I think there's many people youngsters who aspire to be future, aspire to be Metro Boomin, aspire to be a great director. I think that, they are doing a phenomenal job of educating themselves. I think that they are of the generation that nobody has to put them on, they can put themselves on based on wherever their destiny lies and their passions fall. And I see it happening every day. I think that they are finding that disclosure.
It's interesting because, look, I consider myself to be extremely blessed. When you were reading off my bio, I'm like, yeah, okay, I interned when I was 14. But I was a lover of music, and I had no idea about the careers in the music business, right? And I happened upon someone coming to speak at my school. I went to Benjamin Mays High School here in Atlanta. Shanti came and spoke.
I was about to say, if it was Mays, it was Shanti.
Yeah, Shanti came and spoke at my school and let me shadow her for a day, and that was all she wrote. That was it. I got my 1 inch, and I took millions of miles, right? But kids are extremely inquisitive, and with the internet and everything else that exists with social media, they connect the dots. They go and find out about all the different careers. But I do think there are so many different careers that exist behind the scenes, even outside of being the music producer or songwriter, and in film and television and in sports. And I do think, I've had conversations with even artists. It'd be important for them to talk about their team of people that are intimately involved with making the decisions and the things that the people that help move their careers forward. And I think that there are things that we can all do together to help bring that to the limelight. And, you know, it's conversations I've been having with some people around me and even artists about how to help introduce the different careers that exist that these kids just don't know about, where you can still be a part of what you love, but you can't necessarily be LeBron, or you can't be Metro, or you can't be, you know, Drake or whoever, even though you aspire to be, because everyone isn't blessed with that talent. Because that's the other thing. It's about the measure of talent. You have people who are good, and then there's great. We're also trying to get back to greatness with the level of talent that exists out here in music, et cetera. So there are other people who can be behind the scenes, and we want to introduce that to these different kids. So we'll find other ways of doing it. Create some great content together, Chris.
I want to say real quick that I think it's important what Chris said. I had the same sort of reaction that he did, that I think that's happening, and that happens all the time when you ask the question. But I think it's a matter of knowing all the conferences and panels and things that go on to be exposed to it. Because when I was in law school, I went to Black Entertainment and Sports Lawyers Conference every year, put my pennies together. I was always on an island, and I was like, how am I going to get there? But I put my pennies together, and I would go, and that's how I first became exposed to a career as an entertainment lawyer, and not even really knowing that that would have been what I would end up doing for so long. So, you know, one thing does lead to the other, but it is also incumbent upon the people around the kids and the creative mind that wants to do something to expose them to all the different things that they can do. Because if you go just Google entertainment jobs behind the scenes, you'll get like so much information you wouldn't even be able to take it in all in one night. So it's definitely out there for the seeking.
And this question is shifting back to D'Angela and the content submissions that you were talking about earlier. 3 quick questions. Who would we make those submissions to? Secondly, is there a specific process to follow in making those submissions? And what time of year should those submissions be made?
Because it's cable television, we pretty much take submissions year-round. We typically don't take unsolicited submissions. So unsolicited means you either don't have a reputable lawyer or agent or manager that we're already in business with or that we are familiar with. In lieu of that, we have a submissions process that's outlined on TV1.tv. At the bottom of the page, if you scroll down to the bottom, there should be a button there called submissions. And I think if you email once you click on that, it'll take you to an email, and then you let the young lady there know that you want to do a submission. They will send you what's called a pitch release form. Once you sign the pitch release form, it comes to my team, and we evaluate everything.
We have time for about one more question before we wrap up at 3:30.
I have a question for D'Angelo.
Go ahead.
That's a switch. Okay, who's going to answer?
How does the emergence of the internet, YouTube, Vimeo, the individual creators and developers who are launching their own content vis-a-vis the global world that we live in, how do you guys interact with them? How do they get your attention? Is there any correlation between your company and that kind of self-start community that's not going the traditional pitch route?
Well, we have, like I said, I have 5 team members, and they're charged with finding new talent. So we have a creative meeting every Thursday afternoon, and we talk about what has inspired. We start every meeting off with what has inspired you this week. What have you seen? What have you read? What have you listened to recently that has inspired you this week? Then we, if things start to bubble to the top, it's kind of like, oh, well, we should kind of keep our eye out on that person or this person. The thing is that TV1's median age is 45, right? And so we're not a millennial network. So there aren't that many people doing user-generated content that would work for the TV1 audience right now. But we did, of course, everybody looked at Awkward Black Girl as a potential submission that eventually became Insecure. With the overnight sensation Insecure, but that's been around for almost 10 years now. She's like a 10-year overnight success. But no, that's the way the business works. I mean, there's no shade. That's just the way, that's the way it works. She was on the grind for a long time and is rightfully being rewarded for such. But we definitely look on YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat and all those different places for talent if it makes sense. The problem is that a lot of people, they're like in their teens and in their early 20s that just wouldn't work for
your media.
TV1. But I do think that it is definitely a right place. And when young people come to me and talk to me about how can I get it, how can I be down, or whatever, they don't say that anymore.
Yeah,
That
that's
was
Peter
That was the
Thomas's,
music
That was
business.
us.
That was you, right? That was you.
That was Miami.
But when they come to you and they say, well, how can I get in the business? My advice is always, the barriers to entry are so low now. You can, a friend of mine made a movie with an iPhone, a beautiful movie called 9 Rides, with an iPhone. It is beautiful. Like when I was making movies almost 20 years ago, we had to make movies on film, and we had to transfer from film to tape, and then we had to edit on tape, and then we had to go back to film. It was a crazy process. You don't have to do that anymore. So the great news is that digital has just broken down all of those barriers to entries, and it's making for a really exciting time. So if there's anyone in this room or anyone in your age group, start using those as tools, because we're looking.
Ethiopia, is that the same for, traditionally in music, you would find an artist and they would do a showcase and, that's gone. And so now, are you still looking at YouTube and finding artists by buzz and all of that? And
Absolutely, and social media.
Yeah.
Social media is a huge way to find new talent. And my A&R scouts, they come all the time like, oh, I just found this kid, or on a blog. But social media is a huge part of it. They're finding each other. They're creating a buzz for themselves. They're getting placements on their own, and they're creating awareness, or they'll reach out to me. They'll reach out to different scouts. It's incredible how much that's created its own community for getting on,
And does that obviously drives the negotiations, depending on how, we know the music industry has changed so much with 360 deals and all of that. Does the driver of social media
100%. 100%. Social media is everything across the board, right? It's all about how many followers do you have, and that really is about your influence at the end of the day as well. So,
Right.
We
absolutely.
cast by social media. So if you have 2 actresses with the same body of work, and someone has 100,000 followers and someone has 10, we're going with the 100,000 followers.
Wow.
Because their level of influence, right? When
Because
marketing and
they're gonna
promoting
tell
the
those
project.
100,000
Right.
people to tune in to TV1 to watch the movie or project. That's
Very
real.
Chris, real quick, and I know we have no time left, but I want to ask him, how does social media play into your role as, as a public servant, but also in this space of music and entertainment and trying to get the word out to everybody about what's happening in the city of Atlanta?
I think that just social media, it has become the medium. That's how the election was won.
Right?
You want to use it as a barometer, you know what I mean? It is the medium of communication. I think that, again, I'll reiterate it, is that all forms of distribution are going through savage disruption. The relationship between the talker and the listener, the seller and the buyer, is as close as it's ever been in life. So nobody has to put you on.
No filter.
Yeah, you don't need anybody to transgress whatever you're trying to get done. You can create your own voice and amplify it yourself. And so that just goes across the board for me, for everybody in this room, for anybody in any medium of sale, for sure.
Very interesting. That's a whole nother topic, and whether that's good or bad, but we don't have time for another panel. But before we go, I do want all of our panelists to give their social media out so that everybody can follow them and stay in touch, so go ahead.
D_Proctor, DEE_Proctor.
At Chris Hicks _.
At Chris Hicks _ okay, at the end,
Yeah.
underscore,
Mhm.
all right?
At the Ethiopian Dream.
So,
Like, I'm living the Ethiopian dream.
Dream,
Right.
absolutely.
At the Ethiopian dream.
All right, well, that is wonderful. Did everybody get that? Okay, well, thank you so much for joining
Thank
today.
you.
We had a great time talking, and everybody put your hands together for this great panel. Awesome, thank you.